This episode is brought to you by Shopify. Upgrade your business with Shopify, home of the #1 checkout on the planet. Shop Pay boosts conversions up to 50%, meaning fewer carts going abandoned and more sales going cha-ching. So if you're into growing your business, get a commerce platform that's ready to sell wherever your customers are. Visit shopify.com to upgrade your selling today.
Thanks for listening to the Red Treehouse, where I tell scary stories to keep you up at night. You can listen to the Red Treehouse on your favorite streaming platforms. Be sure to follow, like, and subscribe. Oh, and leave a 5-star review. And now, you can find the Red Treehouse on Patreon. Join the Red Treehouse community for as little as $3 per month and receive exclusive member benefits. Simply go to patreon.com/Red Treehouse. Important note: sources for this episode can be found in the show notes. The Red Treehouse is dedicated to my dad. I love you, Pop. In this episode of the Red Treehouse, I'm going to read you an original short horror story by C.A. Serna. If that name sounds familiar, it's because I narrated another terrific original short story of his, A Therapy Session, back in Red Treehouse episodes 110 and 111. He's currently working on a full-length novel, and is a talented up-and-coming author. Make sure to get your hands on A Therapy Session in paperback on Amazon, and on Kindle Unlimited. Now, it's my privilege to narrate The Devil's Music, a story that is guaranteed to keep you up at night. So sit back, turn down the lights, pull up the covers, and pay close attention as I read The Devil's Music by C.A. Serna. I'm your host, Will. Welcome to the Red Treehouse. The Devil's Music, written by C.A. Serna. To whom it may concern. My name is Matthew Skiff of Plainsville, Nebraska, and I am currently the most wanted man in Nebraska, and soon the United States. I write this letter under the intent to have it published for the protection and safety of others, and nothing more. I will not ask for forgiveness, because unfortunately, I'm beyond forgiveness from both humanity and whatever God they might worship. Within this letter, I will share my side of the story, but make no mistake, I'm not asking for your sympathy. I take full responsibility for the lives I mercilessly took, and for the many others soon to come. What I'm about to share is meant to be nothing more than providing an insight on the severity of this situation. So please, and I cannot stress this enough, publish and share this story everywhere and anywhere, because all of you are in danger. My story begins on November 11th, 2024. I was working the front end for Righty's Records, a local record shop here in Omaha, when this strange old man walked into the store wearing a formal black pea-coat with a suit underneath, while carrying a milk crate packed end-to-end with vinyl LPs. He quickly turned to me and approached the counter, placing the crate on top with these lengthy arms. There was something about the way his body moved that made me shiver. It was the same feeling I get when I watch a snake slither by. In a hoarse but polite tone, he asked, "Excuse me, young man, do you take donations?" "Donations? Genuinely surprised by his question, I asked, "Are you sure? I mean, we buy used records here too. If you'd like, we can see if any of these are worth." He gently lifted his hand towards me to politely interrupt. "Apologies, my good sir, but there is no need for that. These records belong to my brother, who recently passed away," he scoffed. "Brothers for 65 years, and all he leaves me are these records. Ridiculous. So yes, I want to donate them. I simply have no desire for them. So please, will you take them?" I shrugged. "What the hell, we'll take them." The old man's face grew wide with a smile, then eerily said, "Excellent." And without another word, he turned and slinked out of the store in a haste. I remember looking out the window, expecting to see him pass by, but he never did. It was almost like he just disappeared the second he walked out the door. Shortly after he left, I decided to start checking out the albums he brought in to see if I could recognize any of them. One by one, I carefully pulled each tightly packed record out of the blue milk crate, but none of them looked familiar. Upon further inspection, most of the records I pulled were beyond saving anyway. Suddenly, the phone began to ring, and I was about to answer it when I pulled out one more album, thus beginning my never-ending nightmare. Held in my hand was the most obscene-looking album cover that I've ever seen. I'm not talking about some avant-garde, peace and love hippie psychedelic cover art. I mean, this thing was incredibly disturbing to look at. Posed in the center was a blonde dead woman with skin the color of polluted smog that sharply contrasted with the white velvet dress she wore. She shot bright yellow beams from her eyes while ripping her own face off. Split evenly down the center, each hand held a piece of flesh that pulled outwards, making her entire face look like an anatomical diagram showcasing her raw, bleeding muscles. Cherry red paths left behind by drops of blood trailed on her decomposing neck, reaching down to her clavicles before stopping near her cleavage, perfectly preventing the dress from any stains. The woman sat on top of a rotting horse carcass with green-colored skin, except for the occasional pockets of pus that oozed out a custard-colored fluid. The eye sockets were empty, like they were plucked post-mortem, and dawned red streaks of tears that pooled below its sunken face. Encircling them both were these dark crows extending their wings, overlapping and creating a perfect ring around the dead equestrian and her steed. Within the ring was a background of blue skies and clouds that served as the background for both the woman and the horse. But beyond the ring of crows, the rest of the background was filled end to end with translucent colors that seemed to continuously shift and change like a kaleidoscope anytime the cover was moved. I couldn't take my eyes off of it, even though every part of me was screaming to look away. I just couldn't. The longer I stared at that album cover, the more I felt myself fall under some kind of hypnosis. Something about the way the colors kept constantly moving, while that dead woman remained perfectly still under those blue skies. It was inviting. Now that I think of it, I'm not sure if I even knew where I was anymore. Everything felt hazy, like a drunk trying to remember the events of last night with a hangover. All I saw was the album. Then, all of a sudden, I heard a voice that resonated throughout my mind like echoes in a tunnel. The sound reverberated all the way down to my auditory nerve, but I couldn't understand what was said until I heard it again. "Matt." All at once, my hearing was restored, and I found myself back at the record store standing in place, still holding the record in one hand and the phone in the other. I turned towards the voice to see a middle-aged man, with framed glasses and a poor comb-over that stretched finger-like strands of hair across his balding head. It was none other than my boss, and the owner of Wrighty's Records, Mr. Wright. "Matt," he said again, this time perfectly audible. "What the hell are you doing?" "Mr. Wright," I asked with the same confusion he had. "When did you get here?" I quickly put the record back before Mr. Wright could notice. "I called the store about an hour ago and got no response, so I rushed back, only to find you frozen in place like a damned fool. How long have you been standing there?" he asked impatiently. I tried to respond, but all I could mutter out was, "I'm okay." Mr. Wright studied me, trying to smell the lie on me, but he only responded with, "Right. Well, I'm back from running errands, so I can man the front for a bit. I think you ought to go to the back and rest your head for a bit. You look like shit." I didn't answer. It's better to not engage with comments like that from Mr. Wright. He had a reputation for being a difficult person, who also happened to have a very violent history. His attention turned to the milk crate. "Someone wanting to sell these?" Actually, these were donated. Mr. Wright rubbed the gray stubble on his chin, then said, "Take those to the back room with you. Once you're done getting your shit together, I want you to start checking those records, see if they're worth anything. Got it?" "Yes, sir," I said before rolling my eyes, once my back was turned to him. The back room was where we did most of our research whenever customers tried to sell records. It was basically a small office with stacks of records organized by each customer who wanted to sell them. Most of the work back there was sitting at the desk, researching value and prices, and listening to used records for a quality check. But today, I was planning on researching only one album. I placed the crate to the left of a small square record player, where a pair of auxiliary headphones rested on top of the dust cover. I sat down at the desk chair and turned to my right where our computer stood, and eagerly began my research. At first, I didn't find anything. Every reliable site I knew was pulling nothing up, so I had to dig deeper. Eventually, I found some sketchy forum site that held my answers. According to the forum, the album's title has never been discovered, but it was recorded sometime in the late 1970s by a band named DCL XVI. It was produced by a small label named Lived Records, but it never officially released. In fact, I read that they only pressed about 100 records before the band suddenly went missing. It wasn't a lot of information, but what little I found only piqued my curiosity, and against my better judgment, I decided to listen to the record. I did my best to avoid looking at the cover as I slipped the black vinyl press disc out of its sleeve and cautiously placed it onto the record player. Placing the headphones on my ears, I gently dropped the needle onto the outer rings, causing the headphones to play the usual crackling of a needle finding the grooves as the record began to spin. Then, I heard something. A high-pitched ringing quietly started to play before it grew louder, and like a mutt with a dog whistle, I winced in pain. Except I didn't actually wince. I had only thought about it. When I tried to move any part of my face, I quickly learned I couldn't. The hot rush of panic didn't start until I tried to use my hands. I told myself to make a fist, but every time I tried, nothing moved. While the ringing continued, I felt my eyes starting to dry, since I was unable to blink. Tears attempted to lubricate my eyes, but they only rushed their warm bodies down my cheek. And then, the drum beat kicked in. Every time I heard that deeply hollowed beat, I felt the muscles in my body slowly lose their integrity, like they were melting, turning me into a human waterbed as liquid sloshed around inside my skin, causing the surface to ripple, while music The most awful, distorted, haunting music that I had ever heard began to play. If I had to describe it in words, imagine if there were 100 full-sized vans speeding down an interstate, packed full of people with no prior musical experience, and each one of them continuously blared out sour notes in different keys, abusing their ears, as all the vans suddenly crashed into each other. Whatever sound was produced at the exact moment the vans crashed into each other, that's what it sounded like. Along with the terrible instrumental, there were other sounds playing in the background. Hysterical laughing that never stopped. Babies crying loudly. Women screaming so hard their vocal cords ripped. Dogs whimpering out in pain. And the occasional sound of gunfire off in the distance. All of this was mixed with solemn voices that chanted in a foreign language with the same gumption as a witch casting spells. And there wasn't a single thing I could do about it. Just when I thought I couldn't take any more, it stopped. I felt a hot sting from my dried eyeballs as I slowly started to blink. To my surprise, I felt myself get out of the chair and stretch, like I had just taken a long nap. I then turned the record player off and took off my headphones before I shouted, like a child being cute. "Mr. Wright, will you come back here for a moment?" I still couldn't control myself. Everything I was doing, everything I was saying, it wasn't me. "Don't worry, Matt. I won't let anything bad happen to you." I couldn't believe it. There was someone else inside my head. Someone else was controlling me. In a few breaths, I watched Mr. Wright walk in, his middle-aged face scrunched together, visibly showing that he was annoyed. "What you want, Matt? I'm busy." He walked in, then jumped at the sight of me. "Holy shit, are you all right?" "You know I fucking hate you, right?" I said without missing a beat. Mr. Wright's eyebrows narrowed as he said, "The fuck you say to me, boy?" His hands clenched into fists. I said, "I fucking hate you. Can't you hear me, country hick fuck?" I didn't know what was going on, but like a rolling stone, I couldn't be stopped. I stared at Mr. Wright as anger rolled on his face. He didn't say anything after that. He didn't need to. In a blink, his beefy fists were raised, then launched towards me, aimed at my face. As he floated like a butterfly through the air, I anticipated the sting. But it never came. Instead, I watched myself catch his fist into my hand like a baseball, smashing his knuckles against my palm. The nastiest smile I've ever made grew on my face, before in one quick movement, I clenched my hand, crushing his entire fist, and severing it from his wrist. Mr. Wright screamed in pain while he held his fresh stump that gushed out streams of blood. I stepped towards him, causing Mr. Wright to jump backwards in fear and landing onto the ground. He turned his body and tried to get up, but the headphones were already coiling around my arms. My foot stepped onto his back while I leaned down and wrapped a cord around Mr. Wright's neck, choking him as he struggled on the ground. He begged for me to stop, and said that he was scared, and while I heard every word, it only encouraged him. My arms inched farther away as the cord delicately began to slice his skin, opening a floodgate of gore right in front of me. "You're not looking too good, Mr. Wright," I said in a bitter tone. "You need to rest your head for a bit." Then in one swift, effortless motion, my arms jerked away from each other, severing Mr. Wright's head clean off. As his lifeless body hit the floor, his head launched out of the back room and rolled into the store before resting on its side, eyes staring right back at me. Then I heard her screaming. That poor woman, she must have slipped in while I was beheading Mr. Wright. Whatever was controlling me reacted fast, as we both heard the shopkeeper's bell ring from her exiting the store. With great speed, I sprinted out of the store to find her. Once outside, I saw the woman running down the sidewalk, pushing a stroller as she begged and screamed for someone to come save her. Merchants and customers of the other shops on the street didn't move. They simply stood and stared even after she tripped over herself, crying in pain. She fell face first, landing onto the cold concrete while the stroller rolled away from her. Her body turned itself around to face me as I was already making my way towards her. When I reached the injured woman, her bloodied face stared at me while trying to crawl away, but it was no use. I stooped to the ground, where I gently placed my cold hands on her reddened cheeks, dampened with tears. Inching lower to her ear, I heard myself whisper, "Come on, baby. Don't fear the Reaper." She screamed for help one final time before I began to violently smash the back of her skull into the concrete, over and over and over again, until there was nothing but brain matter soaking into the sidewalk. With my hands freshly covered in her viscera, I looked into one of the storefront windows and saw those people all just staring in horror. When I approached the same window, I placed my hands onto the freezing glass, leaving behind my bloodied handprints, then drew an arch underneath to create a grotesque smile. Hollowed screams bled through the glass, and within minutes a mob of angry people rushed out the store. As the crowd grew bigger, they completely surrounded me in the middle of the street, cutting off any chance of escape, or so they thought. I knew by now that I wasn't the one in danger. They were. Another wicked smile beamed at them longingly, before they one by one came at me. Some of them tried to grab me or pin me down, but each one that tried failed. I must have injured maybe 6 or 7 men before finally ripping off someone's arm and using it to cave in their skull. More chilling screams were heard as the mob disbanded quickly, running for their lives as the sound of police sirens rang in the distance. Before long, a police cruiser sped down the street and braked hard, making the tires screech as rubber burned on the pavement. Coming to a complete stop, 2 police officers immediately stepped out of the vehicle and pointed their weapons at me. One of them yelled out, "This isn't a joke. Get on the ground now." My only response was, "Do you see me laughing?" Without another warning, the 2 policemen opened fire, taking a few shots, expecting me to drop dead. But to their shock, I was still standing. They continued to shoot until their entire clip was emptied, their faces flushed with terror as I continued to approach them. I should have been dead. They knew that. And yet I was already grabbing the driver and pinning him against the vehicle. With fear in his voice, the policeman asked, "What the hell are you?" Me? Well, I'm just a simple kind of man. I smiled at him one last time before throwing him onto the hood of the cruiser. I grabbed the officer by the ankles, then violently whipped the entire body onto the hood of the car. He begged his partner for help, but he had already taken off by foot. I whipped his body again, and this time, his upper half dislodged from the rest of his body. The innards of his upper half spilt over the white hood of the car while his legs dangled off the side. Before finally leaving the scene, my body walked back into Righty's and collected the album, then headed for a nearby woodsy area. My body wandered through the trees as my mind began to torment itself, replaying all the events that just occurred. All the petrified screams, all the ghastly looks, all the trauma that I caused and witnessed.
I can make it so much easier for you, man.
The dark voice spoke again. Who are you? My mind thought.
Don't be alarmed. I'm a friend.
I felt that smile return. A friend.
That's right, man. Your friend. And as your friend, I want to make you a deal.
There, on that cold evening in November, I made a deal to share this body with him, with some conditions. The biggest being, I no longer have to watch him commit his grisly murders. Of course, I can control my own body again, but only when he permits me. In fact, the reason I'm writing this letter now is because he commanded me to. It was his idea to share my first-person experience, but only to strike fear into others. I looked at it as an opportunity to warn others of the evil that freely roams this earth. You're not messing with some run-of-the-mill serial killer. You're messing with forces of evil. Real, diabolical, unrelenting evil that can only be summoned whenever that record is heard. And since the record is now in his possession, he has plans to expose others to it, to grow an army of servants. There will be more of me. Whether you believe me or not, it's completely up to you. But understand that everything I have disclosed has only been the truth. Today it's just me. But tomorrow, there could be others sharing their bodies with a psycho killer. Others running rampant in the streets, slaughtering anyone they meet like cattle. I've done my part. Now it's up to you to do yours. You can try to run away, and maybe that'll delay your doom. But I cannot guarantee it. As long as he has that record, we are all in terrible grave danger. I hope you heed this warning. I really do.
But I'm afraid it's time for him to take control now.
What did you think of this terrific horror story? Comment or email redtreehousepod@gmail.com. A huge shout out to C.A. Serna for sharing this. You can follow him on Instagram and Threads at caserna.author. And a reminder, you can find a therapy session on Amazon and Kindle Unlimited. Simply type in "A Therapy Session" by C.A. Serna. As we turn down the lights on this episode, make plans to join me next time as I read a collection of short horror stories. I'm your host, Will. Thanks for joining me in the Red Treehouse.